Your brain needs information to think, to question, and learn. But what happens when that information is restricted and filtered and controlled? Well, it's like feeding a body nothing but water and crackers. It doesn't grow stronger, it just turns off, it just shuts down. And pretty much every high control group in history figured this out. You don't just demand loyalty, you build a fortress around your followers' minds. You create an information bubble where your version of reality is the only one allowed in, and any outside thought is treated like a virus that needs to be scrubbed with spiritual bleach. And the Iglesia of Cristo has had over a century to perfect this system. The Iglesia of Cristo tells its members to obey and never complain. Simple enough, right? Sounds maybe biblical even. But what they leave out is that this isn't about faith or religion. It's the user manual for a sophisticated system of information control. Last time we pointed out that this echo chamber exists when we went over behavior control. And if you didn't catch it, you might want to go back and watch part 1 before watching this one. And today, we're showing you how it's built. These are the architectural blueprints to the prison for the mind. We're going to dismantle the 3 key pillars that create, maintain, and reinforce the INC's echo chamber. We're going to look at a monopolized media empire. We're going to look at their inescapable surveillance network and the masterstroke, turning critical thought itself into a sin. First is pillar 1, what I call the closed circuit, how the INC monopolizes their message. All right, so in pillar 1, it's in your how to build a cult starter pack. You got to seize the narrative, right? You have to become the only voice your followers trust. And for the INC, this isn't just a strategy, it's the foundation of their entire organization. It's built on a media empire and a total monopoly on their version of God. And unfortunately, it starts with the Bible. And the INC uses a standard 66-book Protestant Bible, but then teaches its members they're absolutely forbidden from trying to understand it on their own. The official doctrine is that only the church administration, led by their executive minister, has the God-given key to unlock the scriptures. It's like they hand you a treasure map, right? But then tell you you'll be cursed if you try to read it for yourself. And the only one person can tell you what it says. Well, that's their executive minister, right? And this authority was first claimed by the founder, Felix Manalo, who said he was God's one and only messenger for the last days. And this special power has been passed down ever since. I want you to think about that. Members are told that trying to understand the Word of God by yourself isn't just a waste of time, it's a dangerous act of pride that can lead to hell. Never mind that the Bereans in Acts 17:11 searched the scriptures daily to test even the Apostle Paul's teaching, showing that truth must be examined. Then Paul reinforces this in 2 Timothy 2:15, which shows believers need to study to show yourself approved. But with INC, any attempt to connect with God without the administration's filter is rebellion. So right off the bat, you have a system of complete dependency. The Bible stops being a book you can explore, understand, and apply, and instead becomes a broadcast you can only receive from one approved station. This also creates a giant flashing paradox that the church conveniently ignores. The INC calls the Catholic, Protestant, and other churches apostates and rejects them. Yet they use a Bible that was assembled, preserved, and canonized by those very same groups. The irony here, right? It's like claiming you're the only one who knows the secret recipe for a world-class steak, but admitting you stole the cookbook from a rival chef you say can't even turn on the grill. What? All right, so with the source of truth locked down, you build the delivery system, and the INC has done this with corporate-level efficiency. Through their Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and Christian Era Broadcasting Services International, the INC runs its own TV networks like NET25 and INC TV, radio stations, and a whole suite of websites under the INC Media banner. And of course, there's the OG, their magazine Pasugo, which means God's Message. And since 1931, this magazine has been a masterclass in indoctrination, propaganda, and filled with cherry-picked Bible verses to prop up their own claims and attack other religions, especially Catholicism. So this closed media loop allows for the next ingredient: repetition, repetition, repetition. Every week, the exact same lesson prepared by the central administration is taught in every single congregation across the globe. And this is absolutely bananas, right? I'm sorry. As a process engineer, I'm all about standardization, but this is absolute craziness, all right? Sorry, we'll get back to it. The global INC messages are simple and hammered home constantly. The administration speaks for God. There is no salvation outside the INC. Obey, never question. It's like a song stuck on repeat. Eventually, your brain starts humming the tune without even thinking whether or not you like the song or not. And this isn't biblical shepherding or biblical preaching. It's classical conditioning. Studies show that if you hear a lie enough times from sources you're trained to trust, it starts to sound like the truth. The INC's media machine ensures that from the TV to the radio to the magazine on the coffee table, members are surrounded by a single, unified, and unchallengeable story. And this system really went into overdrive during the 2015 leadership crisis that we talked about back in part 1, when the current leader's own mother and brother were kicked out after accusing the church council of corruption. And the INC's media didn't address the allegations. Nope. It just carpet bombed its channels with sermons on loyalty, painted these whistleblowers as agents of Satan, and heavily discouraged members from even talking about it. The narrative was sacred. Questioning it now was officially a sin. Rebellion against the administration. And every time I read that phrase, the administration, in my research, I got the chills, you know? You know what I mean? It sounds dystopian and ominous. And that's how the first pillar stands firm: a closed loop where the only voice is the administration's. Which brings us to pillar 2, what I call the surveillance state, a community of eyes. So we have a closed media system, and that's a great start, but it's not foolproof. To truly seal an echo chamber, you need to make sure no outside information gets in and no internal dissent gets out. The INC achieves this with its second pillar, a culture of surveillance that turns a community of faith into a network of informants. On paper, the INC structure looks supportive. Members are in local congregations, or locales as they call them. Then they're broken down into smaller groups. There's deacons and officers are assigned to look after their spiritual well-being. It sounds lovely, almost like a biblical leadership structure, but not quite. Under that warm, fuzzy blanket is a cold, hard system of social policing. Members are taught that it is their spiritual duty to monitor each other. Reading anti-INC material, which means basically any website, book, or video that isn't made by them, is a huge offense, including the one you're watching right now. You're supposed to report anyone you see engaging with it. Family members are told to watch each other. Kids are taught in their own worship services to report on other kids. In some children's services, leaders have been known to walk around during prayers just to make sure every child is performing correctly. And this gets even creepier. In some locales, head deacons or members of SCAN, the church's security team, are reportedly appointed as watchers during worship services. Their job is to literally watch the congregation and write down anyone's names who doesn't say amen loud enough or who doesn't just seem into it enough. It's like having a spiritual referee watching you during worship, ready to throw that penalty flag if your performance isn't convincing. So then those names, they're put on a list for the minister to follow up on. And based on testimonials from former members where they've leaked internal forms, they show just how detailed this monitoring can be. And this creates an environment where you feel like you're living in a house made of one-way mirrors. You never know who's watching. And the social pressure here it's suffocating. You're not just at church, you're performing your faith for an audience. And if you go off script, you get flagged. Sounds more like Hitler's Germany, okay? And the consequences are very real. The ultimate punishment, as we've talked about before, is expulsion. According to INC doctrine, being expelled means you're not just kicked out of the club, you're sentenced to the lake of fire because there's no salvation outside their church. How convenient. And this threat hangs over everyone's head. Like I've mentioned, you can get expelled for anything from marrying a non-member to questioning the church's finances, or worst of all, questioning the administration. One former member was interrogated for hours after his private online messages criticizing the church were somehow obtained and used against him. He was expelled, and so was his entire family. Another former member was expelled for resisting the administration. His crime? Well, he asked questions and wrote about church history in a way that they hadn't approved. And as he put it, simple questions and dialogue became a sin, and acting on my own got me kicked out. So this surveillance machine also gets fired up for politics. Like I mentioned in part 1, the INC practices block voting, where the leadership tells everyone exactly who to vote for. And to make sure this suggestion is followed, the church has reportedly used its internal network to check on members and identify anyone who might have disobeyed. If you're caught, you may be forced to write a confession letter, begging for forgiveness and pledging your loyalty. So this whole system creates this chilling effect. It breeds paranoia. So within the INC, true friendship it really becomes a high-stakes poker game where you're constantly wondering if your best friend is an informant holding a card that could ruin you. And this sounds like when I was an operations manager at Amazon. Well, that's a different story anyways. And so what this does is it ensures that even if you have doubts, you're too terrified to say them out loud. You know, within the INC church, the walls have ears. And one wrong question could cost you, your family, your friends, and your salvation. That's the second pillar, a cage made not of iron bars, but of watchful eyes. So I want you to take a quick breath here. Go ahead and hit the like button for me. Let's get this message out there, all right? Pillar 3, the criminalization of the mind, how the INC turns thought into sin. So, you've monopolized the information. You've put everyone under surveillance. Now, for the final and most brilliant pillar of the echo chamber, and this one isn't external, it's built inside the mind of every single follower. Pillar 3 is the process of turning critical thinking into sin. The INC doesn't just discourage questions, it rebrands the act of questioning as a moral failure, a spiritual crime, and this starts by painting all outsiders as critics and monsters. Ex-members, journalists, academics like myself, we're not people with just a different opinion. Apparently, we're tools of the devil, enemies of the church, or hateful persecutors trying to destroy God's chosen people. Just look at the comments in some of my videos and you'll see what they say about me. And to add a layer of real-world intimidation, the church has a history of filing libel lawsuits against its critics, creating a legal firewall to go with the spiritual one. They just did this against some satire social media channels. You can Google that or look it up on YouTube. It's crazy. And members are explicitly forbidden from even listening to this anti-INC material. They're taught that listening to a critic is like opening a direct line to Satan. This creates an intellectual quarantine, if you will. A devout member will instinctively close a video or article that's critical of the INC. Not because they've weighed the evidence, but because they've been trained to believe the information itself is spiritually radioactive. It's an automatic defense mechanism. It's like like a body having an allergic reaction. The mind doesn't evaluate the idea, it just violently rejects it as a threat. And this is reinforced with some Jedi mind trick logic woven into their lessons. The biggest one is the constant appeal to authority. The logic here, it's a perfect circle, like a snake eating its own tail. The administration is always right because God appointed them. Well, how do we know God appointed them? Well, because the administration says so. And any evidence to the contrary is, by definition, a trick from the devil. Another favorite is the straw man argument. Critics, like myself, are rarely quoted accurately. Instead, our arguments are twisted into something absolutely ridiculous and easy to knock down. The church then heroically demolishes this fake argument, like building a scarecrow, punching it over, setting it on fire, and declaring yourself the world champion boxer, making members feel like all criticism has been defeated. The result is a deep-seated guilt and fear around independent thought. When a member starts to have doubts, they don't see it as a healthy part of faith. No, they see it as a spiritual and personal failure. They feel ashamed of their weakness and terrified of where it might lead, expulsion and/or damnation. It forces them to practice this sort of doublethink, holding two contradictory ideas at once and actively crushing the one that makes them feel uncomfortable. And the system turns the brain's natural curiosity into a source of pain. It's like training an animal with a shock collar to stay inside an invisible fence. One former member described this perfectly, where he says, "I'm not concerned, not because I have lost belief, but because my belief struggles in a space that fears questions more than it welcomes growth." So the system is designed to make blind obedience easy and real thought painful. It turns faith into a script you just have to follow. And this final pillar is the lock on the cage. It turns every member into their own jailer. So the fear of asking questions becomes so automatic that external control is barely even needed anymore. The echo chamber is no longer just the church or the TV station. It's been installed inside their head. The programming is complete. So critical thought is now a sin, and the mind is conditioned to do one thing and one thing only: obey. So let's look at the blueprints we just uncovered. These aren't just random rules. They're three interlocking pillars of a masterfully designed system. Pillar one, the media monopoly, where it hijacks the Bible and creates a closed information loop, so the only voice they hear is the administration's. Pillar two, the surveillance network, which uses a community of informants and the threat of eternal damnation to enforce the rules and to keep dissent silent. And pillar three, demonizes critical thought. It hacks the members' own minds, turning them into their own jailers who are terrified of their own questions. And together, they don't just create an echo chamber. They build a prison for the mind, a bubble where followers are isolated, dependent, and taught to fear the very thoughts that could set them free. It's a system that doesn't ask for faith in God. It demands total, unquestioning obedience to men. So if you think a true faith should be strong enough to handle a few questions, go ahead and hit that like button for me. And if you know someone trapped inside this bubble, maybe someone who's been told that watching this video is a sin, do them a favor and share this investigation. They're the ones who need to see it most. And make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications, because in part 3, we're going even deeper. We're done with the structure. Next, we're going inside the mind to break down the specific techniques of thought control, how the INC reshapes identity, weaponizes unity, and turns doubt into a psychological weapon. And comment below, what other areas of Iglesia and Cristo do you want me to cover? Have you experienced the things I've covered in this video for yourself? All right, so looking ahead, this isn't just indoctrination, it's psychological reprogramming, and we're about to show you the instruction manual, all right? This is Apex Apologetic. We exist to equip believers to engage culture with biblical clarity and to defend the faith once for all delivered to the saints. I'm Dr. Sean Michael, and I'll see you in part 3. Out.